All right, hi everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is May 5th, 2022. If you are watching this recording from home, we encourage you to come join this live. We meet every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. It's just a way for you to come meet the team, other members of the community, bring up any questions you have about using any of the Carvel tools, anything you might want to bring up to the community, or just listen in what everybody's working on. For those that aren't able to join us live, we have other options for you to interact with us. You can find us in the Carvel channel in the Kubernetes Slack workspace. You can email us. You can also find us in GitHub, on any other project repos, or on Twitter at Carvel_dev. If at any point you're interacting with us or any other members of the community, we ask that you please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is listed here and linked out into our repo. For those that are on the call today and you have anything you wish to discuss, any questions you might have, any feature requests, whatever it may be, please add that to discussion topics here and we'll get to it towards the end of the meeting. And for those that are using Carvel tools, we want to know more about how you're using these Carvel tools. It helps us better develop the tools themselves, and also helps the community understand better on how others are using it. So we created this pinned issue, and you can add a comment with all the details we ask of you here, and add a PNG version of your logo to the comment, and we can add it to the adopters file, which is, it's optional, but we would love to showcase you as an adopter of Carvel. And just a reminder for those that are on the call today, please be sure to add your name and any organization that you're representing to the attendees list here. Moving on to announcements. For content this week, we have a blog post that Sumik wrote on getting to know app resources better with KCTRL. Sumik, did you want to go over this?
Yeah, sure. So it just sort of goes over all of the new commands that we have added and how we have sort of enhanced the package consumption experience. It's nothing we haven't already talked about here. It's just for folks who sort of see the release maybe someplace else and then take a look at it. It just summarizes all of the new features added and how it helps our users. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Sumik, for putting this together. And as far as upcoming content, that's an open slot for next week. So for those that aren't aware, we do have a sign up item on our repo for those that want to share things about how they are using Carvel, or share any knowledge that's Carvel related with the community. And if you have anything, it doesn't matter if it's a blog post or a vlog, video, demo, if you're presenting at a conference, anything like that, we would love for you to participate, and you can add in your details in one of these slots. And if the date that you wish to have isn't listed here, just simply add another row and the date that you're going to be participating, and we'll be sure to it in all of our channels on the community meeting and whatnot, as well as we will send you a Carvel t-shirt as a thank you. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share more and help guide you in the right direction there. Moving on to releases, we had a release happen, I believe, today with CAP 0.47. And who wants to go over more details on this release?
I could go with this. So 4.7 has come up after I think a gap of around 2 months plus, and we have added a bunch of stuff in this. I think the biggest contributor to this release in terms of number of issues addressed is Tanushri. She has around 5 releases which have gone in. So thank you, Tanushri, for that. Of course, we have Neil's PR, which is also there with help from Praveen, who has worked on what is called as the adding a suffix to the config map for cap. So now with this, what happens is this is an experimental feature. It is people can opt in for this. It will not be available by default. So if you want to use this feature, what you should do is set up the environment variable that is mentioned there to true, and you can opt into this behavior. With this, cap will add a suffix to your config maps, which was earlier only the name of the app that was being deployed. So a bunch of stuff related to that, more documentation available. I think you can have a look at it, take a look at that later on. Another one that has been added is having a new flag which has been added, which says I would like to rename an app while I'm deploying, if that app, if the previous app exists with a particular name, right? So I think Neil, who's contributed to this again, could give you a better information about this one. Neil, feel free to chime in. A bunch of other stuff that we have added, that is, one is a wait rule which matches what is there in Kate's right now, related to observed generation. So this was, I think, added recently in Kate's, and we are going ahead and supporting that in our wait tools too. So yep, Neil, sorry, you wanted to add something?
That's all good. I was happy to wait till you were finished. Yeah, so this new flag on cap deploy emulates the behavior of cap rename, which allows you to change your app name from A to B. The reason that we have introduced this flag is that for some systems where, for example, kapp-controller, any sort of like reconciliation loop or something that's happening on an ongoing basis, this is a more optimized version of calling cap rename just continuously instead of, so this will basically do that just on the first try. And then once that migration has happened from A to B, it will behave in the same way as a regular cap deploy from then on. So it's just an optimization and like bringing together those two features.
Okay, great. Thank you for those details. Does anybody have any questions regarding this release? Okay, just want to do a call out to Nick Hughes for their contribution. Really appreciate you helping out with this release as well. Moving on to status updates. Is there anything updated for the project roadmap to call out for this week? Nope. Okay. All right, moving on to items being worked on this week from the backlog. Who wants to talk over YTT items?
I can do that first one. So some work that's ongoing right now, it's in the late stages, is being able to opt out of validations during an execution in YTT. So we're currently working on this this feature to be able to write rules around what's a valid data value. And we're aware that like sometimes there'll be a situation where the person who wrote the rule had good intention, but the circumstance in which YTT is executing, the assumptions that were baked into that rule may not be true for them. And the ability to temporarily disable that would be very useful. So we're in the midst of implementing that, so that'd be like a command line flag. And then the other part of that work is providing a mechanism to be able to enable pre-alpha code. So like this might be something that we're just not ready to release, or pre-beta, something that's not GA. So we're implementing it's kind of a little bit of a theme. It's a lot like what Neil was talking about in cat, to be able to turn on a particular feature. We'll have a stable environment name called YTT experiments, which will accept a comma-separated string of experiments. So the first one will be validation. So this will start to ensure that validations are not enabled at all until we deem them as generally available quality and completeness. So you would be able to turn that on, kick the tires just by including that environment variable in doing that. And we'll have other experiments that'll start to sit behind that mechanism. So that's the first item in the YTT list. Somebody want to talk about the other one?
Sure, I can take the other one, the data value schema validations. This issue is being worked on. It's almost done with, it's in PR now and should be ready to merge in a couple of days.
The last item in that list, the chore to move where the playground is hosted, it's a work in progress. Shouldn't have any user-facing changes there.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions or comments on these 3 items for YTT?
I had a quick question on the experimental flag. You talked a little bit about like, eventually we will like make these GA. Do you all have any sort of like timelines or criteria around like how you will end up promoting those things? So for example, like the validations, at what point, or like after how many users are using it, or I was just curious if you have any sort of like idea of when those things.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't have a hard and fast criteria that we're following, but we definitely, at the very least, we're coming back to those. So we did some initial user research around the feature in the first place, and those that we know that are going to be kicking the tires around it, and get feedback about how's this working, not just in the most obvious cases, but in more complex cases. We do a lot of our own experimental or exploratory testing ourselves, but getting that feedback, being able to like have some of our more involved users be able to give us feedback about not just whether or not the functionality works for them, but are there any concerns over the UX or anything like that? We want that kind of feedback. So when we get either reaffirming or critical feedback about that, that'll be enough signal for us to flip the bit and make that GA. So it's a little bit of a judgment call about confidence, but that's one of the general things. Am I addressing your question, Neil?
Yeah, that's helpful. I was the reason I was asking is like if we deemed the experiment of having an experimental flag like a success within YTT, like bringing it to maybe like some of the other tools, or yeah, because I like the idea of it.
Okay, any other questions?
One question also, In terms of it being experimental, what does that mean in terms of level of documentation? Like a lot of projects when it's alpha or things like that don't tend to give many docs. Is that the plan here as well? Or will there be docs on how to do validations? Or is it go read the Go code and figure out what was done in the back end?
Yeah, both. So initially, what it means is you'll have access to features that are in development if you turn it on. So could be buggy, could be working great. And at that point, it depends on how we've sliced up the work if we're writing documentation for that piece yet. So documentation work is sometimes we do it right alongside the feature development. Sometimes, like actually in the case of validations, there's a bunch of stuff that we're looking to see how they settle. And so there'll be actually quite a bit of documentation we'll be writing sort of in the later stages. If you're interested, so in this particular case, it's probably going to mean there isn't going to be a whole lot of like written how-tos as you go along. That said, we're perfectly happy to take some time with folks to like give them a quick run over of how the feature works and get you going with it if that's what you want. You can swing by the Slack channel, DM us. Be happy to do that in the meantime.
Yeah, I think that even just having like that HackMD that you had put together, John, with the validations originally, whether it's a Google Doc, which may be easier for like collaboration of comments and things like that, may be an easy way of if there was like a Google Doc for every experimental, let's say, feature, and with like templated out docs, like not like really well formatted anything, just all the information that is planned to be in docs, maybe that would allow for collaboration in like a very organized fashion on a specific topic that things like GitHub aren't really great for, or Slack, because things get lost in Slack. Just
Yeah, that's
idea.
fair. I'm digging it. There is the proposal, which for the most part has stayed relatively stable actually. And I wonder if there's like a space there. It could be really not a lot of work to maybe add a little section in there to have a little bit of a getting started kind of thing.
Right. Even
that
not
could
just getting started, just what the actual keys are, what the actual annotations are that can be added, what they mean. Like a one sentence on each one of what this actually means, because sometimes terminology is always the difficult one, and some people may think that one word means something and it means something completely different. So just like the one-liner of what this annotation means, not even, it's experimental. Don't give any getting started or anything like that necessarily, just what this is and what you could use. Then let people figure out how to use it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We have a lot of that detail actually right in the proposal. And I wonder if the delta here is just something that is around kicking the tires to say, here are the 3 spots in the proposal that if you looked at, you could get started.
Yeah, just something like that. And just making sure there aren't things necessarily in the proposal that didn't make it in. Right. There may be things in the proposal that because like me and you had back and forth on some things on Slack on like, should this be added? Should this? I don't know if the proposal was updated with that or if there's still older things in there. But when it gets released, if that can just be gone through, that'll make it much easier for people like myself to go and test it out then and actually kick the tires with this so that we can also give feedback.
Yeah, great point. In this particular case, I was really good about applying feedback that we got pretty much immediately. So after our conversations, I made those changes. So in this particular case, the proposal is up to date, but I get it that like that's just not always true. So yeah, so making that clear so that someone can confidently get started with something like that. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, thanks, Scott, for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on to image package. Joao?
Hello. So image package. we realized that our version 26 was quite a big leap, and it showed up that we had some lack of coverage in some of our tests, which is sad because we broke some of our functionality. For example, like this registry insecure flag no longer worked after that change. But yeah, so we've been working on addressing this, and it's trying to make the test a little bit more resilient to capture scenarios that were not being captured before. So that's mainly the work that has been happening for image package this week. I am hoping to create a release somewhere in the beginning of next week that will contain this and some fixes and some bumps on dependencies as well. And yeah, so that's basically what we've been working on, and that's what's going to happen somewhere next week.
All right. Any questions for Joao? Okay. Moving on to kapp-controller. Who here wants to talk about this?
I can talk about this one. I've talked about it a little bit earlier. The new flag that came out in CAP 47. That'll be something that kapp-controller will be making use of to fix issue number 376, which is the shorthand is that today, if you have a package repository and a package install with the same name, they will fight each other and bad things will happen. So this flag will be used so that kapp-controller today, when it deploys apps, it appends a -ctrl, which you may have seen in some of the CAP apps that are deployed. And with the hopefully next release or whenever this change goes out, those apps will now have a new thing appended to the end of them depending on their type. So package repositories, for example, will be .packageR instead of -ctrl. So this is like these are the internal names that kapp-controller uses, but I figured I would bring it up because our users always surprise us in the ways that they use our stuff. So if anyone is using or like relying on the -ctrl and we are unaware and they are going to be broken by this, please shout in any of the channels or here if you get a chance.
Okay, any questions for Neil regarding this?
I think, by the way, that Cube apps are using that -ctrl. So I think in their package management, in order to pull some information, they're getting it from the appcr directly and using the CTRL name in there as well. So they should probably be known about this. I can talk to the Bitnami team.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. If you could put it in the like open source Carvel channel or ping those people on that channel or just in any way.
Yeah, I'll
just,
ping them on the Cube apps channel in the Kubernetes Slack.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott, as always. So helpful. Moving on to CAP. Who wants to talk about this item that was just added?
Yeah, so there are a couple of changes that we are working on, and these are mostly PRs which are in review. One of them, I will update this document to add all the description and point it to this link. What we are trying to solve for here is if there is if there are two resources and like a service and a service binding, and one is dependent on the other as well as the second is again dependent on the first one, how do you ensure that CAP does not fail because it is waiting for the second resource to be created. So there are various conditions on which it should be waiting and not waiting for it to be completely ready so that it can go ahead and do the next stuff. So that is what we are trying to solve here. And we are trying to take a generic case, not just service and service bindings, and see that if we could add an annotation, which would help resolve this. So that's work in progress. There are other issues which are about more weight rules having more, what do you say, more control can be given to users to add various conditions in their weight rules. And again, that is through YTT. So that is also what we are doing. And hope to see that out soon. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions for the CAP team regarding this? Okay. Any further status updates or what you're working on this week before? Looks like we don't have any discussion topics. Is anything that folks want to bring up before we part ways? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining this week's edition of the Carvel community meeting. If you are watching this as a recording, we do encourage you to come join us live. We would love to meet you and learn more about you. And hopefully you'll be able to help us grow the Carvel tools as well. So with that, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you soon.